have to read out the information about recording. Recording in meetings. Please note this meeting is being recorded by the Town Council. The recording device is sensitive and the recording cannot be edited. So do not say anything that you do not want recorded. If necessary, I will direct all recording in the room to be stopped, but generally I want to avoid doing that, so we'll normally record everything except any item taken in closed session. Members of the public may also make their own recordings, but must follow our rules for doing so, including stopping recording when requested. And you may wish to note the meeting is being videoed this evening. Thank you very much. Item 1, apologies for absence.
We have apologies from Councillor Roach, Councillor Carr and Councillor G. Stroud.
Sorry, Hussein asked me to continue.
Declaration of interest and request for dispensations. Any members have any interest to declare or request any dispensations? None received, thank you. And to confirm the minutes of the full council meeting held on 23rd September 2014. Members have had this again, haven't they?
They've had it before.
Members have had this.
Last pair of copies of this one.
Starts on page 154, checking for accuracy first. Page 154, the first page. Second page, number 155. Third page, number 156. Fourth page, number 157. And the final page, number 158. Do you consent to my signing this as a true record of the meeting? All those in favour? Anyone against? Thank you very much. Matters arising. C1461. The clerk was going to find out whether St Evans will list the football.
Oh right, yes. I have written to know, and I chased them again on the 15th of October, and they said they're still looking at it.
Thank you, Clerk. Councillor Roberts.
Sorry I'm late. Personal.
We confirmed the minutes at item 3 on your agenda, Councillor Robbins. We're on the next item now, the matters arising from the minutes of last week. We're still on page 155. The clerk again, I'm afraid.
The clerk...
We'll give a report on that shortly, so we don't need to do that. Okay. Town training signs also, that's the next item. Van review is the next item. Next item on the agenda. Yeah, we're not there.
Oh, okay.
Review of constitutional documentation. That's not on there. Yeah, we can. Just
Yes, I have one to raise matters arising from the last month. So we've got the new standing orders which have come through, and I wanted a point of clarity on that. So it might not be appropriate to respond here, but I'd still like to raise it, if that's all right, Chair.
absolutely. Please go ahead.
So the 2 points of clarity are, one is the statement of whether meetings for Town Council are quorate or not. And I think if you look at the quantity, it says it's 1/3. 1/3 of 16, is that 5 or 6?
6.
So if we better just state 6 councillors and give an absolute number, then we're going to leave this arbitrary figure, I think. The other point was that we've got a clear statement of meetings should not run for more than 2 hours. What happens when we have consecutive meetings, where we have 2 or 3 meetings in the same evening? We've got no statement at all that covers that.
All right, the first one is, that's how you work a quorum out. It's 1/3 and you round it up to, so that it's a whole person, clearly. Then, in terms of the length of a meeting, if a meeting goes past 2 hours, a meeting goes past 2 hours, normally the chairman would ask if it was okay to suspend that standing order so the meeting can continue. the length of the first meeting, it may have a bearing on the tiredness of the councillors for the next one and the speed at which they approach it, but it doesn't have any bearing on whether that lasts 10 minutes or 2 hours. So, yeah, in theory, one meeting could go a long time, and then the other one, people could decide once that meeting starts to adjourn it if it's too late to continue. But I'm not sure if councillors wanted to standing order to clarify that, we could do, but really the process is reasonably clear.
I think if it's limited, for my purposes, in intent, that's clear enough, because we can then refer back to it and we've got some clarification on record.
Custom and practice has been to treat them as two separate reasons, and I think that's all done by the
Thank you, Chair.
The last item I've got is the clerk was going to arrange to have the minutes rationally bound and presented to the district group.
That's in progress.
Okay. Are there any other matters arising that aren't covered at item 4? Thank you. We move on to item 4, which are the other matters arising from skim through. First one, listing assets of community value.
Yes, as I said, I've chased that, and the I was still looking into the question of the ability to list a strip of land, and I have actually fed that back to Mr. Johnson as well.
Item beyond those, the Haverhill plot.
I met with the surveyors, the manufacturer of the framework, and the artist, along with the Arts Centre manager here, last Thursday, to make sure that everyone was singing off the same hymn sheet on that. Construction of the framework is underway. We hope that the angels will be completed by the end of this week, and that will give us a definitive size for the actual plots themselves to be ordered. So things are progressing well. We are talking about the new year now, but things are progressing.
Is there any progress on the solar panels?
Yeah, it's been confirmed that there will be sufficient space on the framework for solar panels, and actually the manufacturer of the frame was saying there's an advantage to that because there's two different types of metal to stop any galvanic corrosion. They can put a PTFE plate between the two metals, so actually not having to run cables through there will help the clock last longer.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Hannon.
Yeah, as far as the plaque is concerned, with the late Councillor Cox, just wondered, is there any sort of thoughts on that from everyone? Because I would like a plaque to be put on the clock, as far as Councillor Cox is concerned.
Councillor Byrne.
Yes, I think that was probably the last initiative that Councillor Cox undertook on behalf of the town, and I think it's right and proper that a plaque is put on the clock. If I may, can I just ask about the solar panels, please, Chair, for the clock? If in the future we want to change from solar panels to standard electricity, for any reason, is that possible? Or do we have to install it with electricity and then use solar panels?
Well, installing the electricity is a very expensive capital solution, plus the ongoing cost of electricity. So you could do that. It would still produce, the engineers would have to work out how to get power to the clocks themselves. The other option is battery powers.
Okay.
So I would have thought to see solar or battery as a backup. But the solar panels would be completely hidden behind the angles you'd see them to.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Hannon.
Yeah, just come back on that. Does the solar panels need batteries as well for the night time?
They probably would, because the solar panel, the area of it would mean there would be some form of battery regulator on there, so there would be something to actually store the power and then turn it to 12 volts and send it back to the clock. So I expect the batteries probably on there.
Sorry, Chair, just coming back on Councillor Cox's flag. Wording, I think the wording will need to be sorted out somehow. Will it be very little wording or?
We need the council to agree to the proposal first, Councillor Hammond, then we'll come back to the wording. So the proposal, we always wish to speak before we take the proposal on the flag. The proposal from Councillor Hammond is that we have a commemorative plaque on the clock when it's completed to the memory of former Councillor Gordon Coles. The wording is yet to be replied.
I want to second that proposal.
Yes, I agree. It's okay. I agree with that.
So we have a proposal, we have a second. All those in favour of the plaque on the clock? Thank you. Unanimous? Anyone against? And you wish to talk about the wording now, Councillor Hammond?
Yeah, I was just wondering if we should, obviously, I'm a bit worried about the family, that's what I'm worried about, his children. Whether we should consult the family as well, as far as the wording is concerned. Perhaps the clerk could come up with some sort of wording or someone else.
The clerk's reminded me that it's probably 3 months before we've been in a position to affix this plaque.
Right.
During that time, we could propose wording and come back to the council.
Okay.
And as you say, but that, hopefully that'll be in consultation with the family. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, just thoughts on that is the original clock, which Councillor Cox was so emphatic about replacing, was originally put in memory of a former clerk, or a former clerk. So we also need to consider that, Councillor Hammond, as how we take care of that. I'm not sure how that's already provisioned in the clock.
Councillor Gooding.
There's already 2 plaques at the base of the tree, one for the clerk and one for the cat that used to be resident outside the clock. Don't laugh, I didn't put the plaques there.
It's true.
So there's already a plaque for, was he William Blake? Yeah, it is William Blake clock. So there's already 2 plaques screwed to the little wall at the base of the tree, facing the access road, service road.
Thank you, Councillor Gooding. I think that probably resolves that, Councillor.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor. Can we move you on to the town twinning signs?
Yes, I wrote to the borough on the 29th of September, and there's a meeting arranged for the 10th of November to discuss what can be done about that. Basically, in terms of, we discussed last time coming up with some partnership arrangement. Also to include getting the 2 old style signs changed to.
Thank you, Clerk. Just on that. And the final item from the minutes of parish boundary. Any further advance on that?
Yeah, we've received a letter from the Chief Executive of the Borough in response to ours to him. That was on the 20th of October. A paper is going to the Democratic Renewal Working Party at the Borough in mid-November, and from there on to the Cabinet, I believe, in December.
Does that cover both the parish boundary and the county boundary?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. Any questions? No? We adjourn proceedings for any reports from the police and other councillors who issued pertinent to Haverhill. Got 2 questions already. Councillors first, I do apologise. Councillor Brown.
My apologies if some of this was brought up at the last meeting. Hopefully it will provide some updates. The new parking and restriction signs for the High Street have been agreed with Highways and should be installed in around about 4 weeks' time. The latest update that I have had on resurfacing of Mill Road is that it is due to be carried out in November. There is an element of caution with this timescale, as apparently Kia may be only had to appoint new subcontractors to carry out this work, as they have had a disagreement with the one that they had originally appointed to carry out the project. Highways have also now agreed to install yellow lines on the walkway from Tesco's to Queen Street. That's pending, honestly. Also, the proposed new pedestrian crossing at Sainsbury's bus stop on the A1307, which has been agreed, is still awaiting the final funding from Highways. Some money has been found. We're waiting for news on the final financial details. All 3 county councillors for Haverhill and Councillor Mary Evans from Clare are united in pushing this come forward as soon as possible, and I hope to get a response in the next week or so. Also, I've been negotiating with paper in highways about getting some extra parking spaces along Millfields Way. Things looking hopeful. We have a further site meeting in a few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Flood?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've spoken to Mr. Wendell. We've done one mobility scooter access, baby buggy access at the bottom of Mill Hill, and I'm choosing another one. I think it might be at Old Clements Lane. I think that looks it, but I'm going to have to do a site meeting with the local highways man. Entering Suffolk, the sign up at Sturmer that says "Welcome to Suffolk" is incredibly badly faded. Somebody brought that up to my attention. I think it was Dan Clark. The Suffolk Highways doesn't know who is responsible for putting up signs that say "Welcome to Suffolk," so we're still pursuing that. School Lane. Trying to get double yellow lines on there. As you know, I have agreed to fund it. I have walked around and the chap from Bury looked at it and said the road surface is going to have to be done. The road is breaking up, so it's going to have to be resurfaced first before we do the signs. I then said, please could we have the barrier outside the school gates? And he said he will expedite that. I've emailed him today saying you're expediting it, any sign of it. I also talked to him about the crossing at the bottom of School Lane on Burton End Road. And people have complained about the speed of the traffic through there. He's going to do a speed survey before asking the local residents about speed bumps because they are noisy and unpleasant. And as such, he will need approval from the local people before we go ahead with that. Somebody up near Honeysuckle Close, not in Honeysuckle Close, asked me to have a look at the hedges. I took Simon Coler, the highways man. I think it was a borough matter, but he did have a contact, and that's been trimmed. Sturmer. I was asked by Councillor Goody to have a look at the sign coming down Sturmer Hill, which was obscured by branches. I got there and some amazing coincidence, somebody had been up there with loppers and taken all the branches covering it. It is now clear to see, and it reveals the fact that it is dirty. And if Councillors Martin and Goody, who are good at giving me jobs, would like to go up there with a mop, I'll hold the bucket for them. I turned on a light, School Lane, Burton End again. Fortunately, we didn't need to use the form this time. The liaison between the residents and through me to the man who controls the lights worked. It's very inefficient, but it does work, and I would do it for anybody if they have problems with the lights. Yes. On a lighter note, Mr. Mayor, I have done research on my family, and I discovered in 1610 an ancestor of mine was the vicar of Abington and Middleton Parish. So I am a local boy after all. Thank you.
I forgive you for straying from issues pertinent to Haverhill on this occasion, Councillor Black. Members of the public, I have two advance notifications. Mrs. Williams wishes to speak.
Mrs. Williams. I'd like to ask the Town Council to consider using money from the Building Acquisition Fund to purchase the corn exchange on behalf of the people of Haverhill, to ensure that it can always be used by the people of Haverhill. And we know it's going to cost, it's up for sale for 200,000, but it's been up for sale for so long, it's just possible that the owners may take a lesser offer.
The councillors wish to respond? I would advise the Town Council looked at the corn exchange as a potential premises for the H1 hub, and regardless of what it was going to be used for, the cost of restoring it to a usable condition was £1.5 million. Which is even more than it's costing us, it will cost us eventually to do the whole Magistrates Court project. But it's not about the purchase, it's about restoring it.
Was that part of the structure, is it structurally sound?
That was the estimate of cost based on a proper survey of the building.
Haverhill Catholic Church actually raised almost £1 million to have their church built, so it can be done. It is possible.
Well, it'd be for councillors to consider whether they want to spend £1.5 million on bringing it back into use.
Council will have to, actually, because there's a webpage called Easy Fundraising. And the people of Haverhill, if they make any sales online, if they go through Easy Fundraising, it makes a donation to the cause.
Thank you.
Also, we could reinstate the Haverhill show. I know we had the Big Bash, but the Big Bash is more of a fun thing. But we could have a Haverhill show, which could raise funds. Now, the Haverhill show could use schools, dance troupes, to showcase what they do.
The Haverhill show is already running. It's organised by local businesses and the proceeds of
It's
the
Big
local
Bash. It's
charities.
called the Big Bash.
And the Haverhill show is already running as well.
Or we could use another show, which actually shows the good people which we have in this town.
Okay.
The talent we have in our schools, the talent which we have in our clubs, and they could all do a showcase, and that could also raise money every year.
Okay, thank
We
you.
could also ask the businesses.
I'm afraid if you're going to run into a list of fundraising ideas for town council, I'm not going to allow you
This
to
is the
continue.
last one.
Thank you,
This is the
Karen.
last one. We could also ask businesses to donate money, and if they donate the money, they could have their name on a plaque to show that they're benefactors of the town. And that plaque could be in the building.
Thank you for your proposals and for your suggestions. Mrs Johnson.
I would just like to ask why, when Berry advertise on their website, they advertise lots of nice places to visit with Berry, and they do list Haverhill as one of the places to visit. But if you get to the Haverhill page, you just get to not nice places to visit, but the whys and wherefores of the sorry. All you get is what happened at the last meeting, and there's nothing pointing out places of interest in town. Is that because we're lacking places of interest? We should be promoting the golf club. We could be, Berry's promoting their golf club, mountain park, places to eat. We're hardly advertising that you get to Haverhill page, and
We get message boards.
which is also well and good further in, but surely we should have something there saying, come to town because what does wonderful we happen?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr Johnson. I would say that something came up at one Haverhill meeting recently, and I understand that one aspect of the master plan will be to attend to marketing the town with a positive image, and exactly as you suggested, things like the golf course and the other activities. We have a huge cinema as well, don't we? So thank you for your suggestion, and I'll ask the town clerk to pass that suggestion on to the people dealing with master plan. Councillor Robbins, did you want to say something? Oh, sorry, I didn't go through that. Councillor Taylor.
No, I'd like to respond to the lady, if that's all right.
Please.
Thank you for that suggestion. I think it's very good. And to the town council, I'd like to point out that we do have a marketing person who works for us in the Arts Centre, and it may well be worth asking her to take a look at the same website and provide her thoughts also to the One Haverhill Committee, because she'll have the experience to make appropriate suggestions for that. Thank you for your suggestion.
Are there any other members of the public? Sorry, Councillor.
That's if she's allowed into One Haverhill meetings to say so.
Who wants to invite you?
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher.
I'm being sarcastic.
Questions are always useful.
Can I mention something, please?
Gordon was in before you. I'll come back to you.
I don't know the status of the old coin exchange has changed, but I believe it was grade 2. And some of the costings on that are enormous. Just to replace one window, it must be a replica exactly of what was previously there. And I think we're talking about a lot of money on that building.
Thank you, Mr. Avery. Sorry, I didn't get your name, madam.
Mrs. Coulter. Back to School Lane. There was a suggestion a while ago, which I saw on the Haverhill case, that they're going to make yellow lines all the way from the crossing down to the road going up to the Parkway. Is Castle? Yeah. Yeah, today that I passed and there was a real nearly bad accident. They're not slowing down, and that's why I asked about speed limit going along there. They're not keeping to the speed limit. A lady in a mobility scooter trying to get the crossing, she was inches away from a tyre. They will not stop. It's a blockage. When you're coming from this side of the road, crossing to the Clements, you've got a blind spot. The right, you're okay, you can see what's coming. But today, two had a fight there today. Two people got out of their cars because he walked back up, the other one walked back up. I mean, there's a school there. I don't think that's right. All them cars along that left-hand side should be not a problem. I spoke to a policeman the other day and she said it was going forward, but...
Thank you for your suggestions. Councillor Fludgy, when I was working on some aspects of school lane, I've been working with Parkway Residents Association and colleagues have, who are also complaining about the very issue you've spoken about, parking along there.
Because they're even parking on the grass verge now, all the way along the pavement.
We have suggested to Haverhill and the borough that some parking on that verge might be an appropriate solution to the position of parking.
No, the end.
I know the Parkway Residents Association want more residents to join their voice in saying this is a problem.
But they're parking right near the crossing though, not, the end bit is just a field. Well, could that be made into a car park? Shall we leave that bit there? Because today that lady was very lucky.
That's the very thing the Parkway Residents Association have pushed Haverhill to do. And as far as I know, Haverhill are considering that. And they also need the cooperation of the highways people to enable access onto it. You can say something, Councillor Sharp. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the public? Then we will...
I should say that Inspector Ferry did give us apologies for this meeting. So he was on to
Then we'll resume the normal meeting back to standing orders at item 5. Councillors being asked to consider whether the kind of public forum we've just had should be a feature of the Finance Committee meetings. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I've thought about this long and hard, and so have colleagues. And if we were to do that, it's going to be repetitious of what happens at a full town council meeting. So I personally would rather the full town council meeting continue to do what it does at the moment, rather than agreeing the finance committee should adjourn for a public forum. So obviously it's open to debate and others' views, but that's what I'd like to propose, that we leave it as it is, and at full town council meeting we have that opportunity.
Councillor Hanlon.
Yeah, I second what Councillor Burns suggested. There's also, there's quite a lot of figure work involved. We do get quite sheets and sheets of figures that we sort of have to delve into, and I can't see what the public can achieve by having these sort of figures on the day, on the night. I prefer the public to go on the website, have a look at the figures, and then bring it up to full council.
Councillor Turner. Thank you, Councillor.
I'm mixed feelings on this one. I think in the interest of transparency, the public have a right to ask questions. I support very much what you said, Maureen, about coming to full town council where all members of the finance committee would usually be. I think that perhaps the middle ground would be that because they are complex questions when we're dealing with finance and not everybody can get to grips with them easily, it would be appropriate if members of the public have questions they want to ask, that they be raised in a more official way and put onto the agenda for us to be able to answer them in an official way, because the answers are usually as complex as the figures and the questions are. So if a member of the public wants to know why we're managing the finance in a certain way, I think that's a very exact topic to be raised as an agenda item on the finance committee, to be answered as a question and a point. Why do we do it that way? And to give the explanation in limited form for all members of the public to see, and that retains the transparency that we should be keeping.
We seem then to have two proposals. The original proposal has been notified is that we should agree to have a public forum upon which we can vote. If that falls, then we would be considering a proposal to have the public able to raise questions in advance of the Finance Committee meeting. Is that what I understand you to make, Councillor Turner?
In writing.
So I would just clarify that it would be extremely unusual, I'm not sure great practice, to have a carte blanche that all questions asked about finance by the public go onto the agenda. You could talk about an agenda could be very, very long indeed if people chose to do that to a council. It is the job of the proper officer of the council to decide what is right and proper to go on the agenda, and some questions are just as easily answered as matters of fact and have dozens of questions come in.
Indeed, I think that would be the point, dear Clerk, that it would give you as the RFO an opportunity to respond to some of the, I suppose, more mundane questions and leave the ones which are of a fundamental nature to be answered on agenda. So I would certainly be happy to have your experience applied to any questions coming in.
I would remind councillors, regardless of our meetings, it is possible for members of the public to write to the RFO at any time, and they're fully entitled to an explanation of any of the figures that are available, regardless of what councillors' views are on that. That's the statutory right they have now, and I think, as it's been suggested, that's probably an appropriate way to deal with most queries. Councillor Perman,
I can't see a problem with the public having a public forum in the finance meeting. What is the public's money in any case? And we've only got a limited time to speak, so it doesn't take up a lot of time. I can't see the problem.
Can we go then to...
Do you mind if I come back? I think, Councillor Furman, you've seen our accounts. You know just how complex they are under the different headings. Members of the public can have a copy of those finances.
I understand.
We have copies out here for them to pick up and have a look at during the course of the meetings. I believe that they have that opportunity now at a full council meeting. There's nothing to hide, it's all transparent, you know that, because you've had your concerns and we've gone through a multiple of things. I just think it's going to be repetitious because we're still going to give them the opportunity again at town council, the full town council meeting. So I have got mixed views about it, but I'm just trying to think of the best way forward, both for the council and for members of the public. Nothing to hide. They can have a copy of whatever they want prior to the town council
I'm just saying that to hide.
and and there's nothing to stop them having that input. Now,
so the matter isn't actually taking place.
Sorry?
If it's a public forum, they can say something during that time, but once the meeting's closed, you have to reply after.
Right, when we have the public forum, like we've had this evening, they can raise questions about finances. Nothing, that's what they can do now.
They can do it at the
Absolutely, yeah.
So the proposal has been put on the agenda, so I have to make a proposal, a possible proposal which is to vote on. The proposal is that we agree to the Finance Committee adjourning for a public forum in accordance with Standing Orders 3E and G. All those in favour of that proposal? All those against that proposal? The proposal fails. We would ask the town clerk to look into ways in which the public are able to engage on matters of finance and to report back to the subsequent meeting.
Can I just ask if there's been any concerns raised as to why this was brought up this evening?
I think my view personally is that we've been looking at all the things surrounding our meetings, partly because of the broadcasting at the building part. We've been through all the standing orders and there are some anomalies. And that seems to be an anomaly that committee doesn't have a public forum. But there seems to be a reason for it, and we'll explore that and see if we can address whatever the problem is that might be caused by not having it.
Chair, do you mind if I just make one small contribution to that? Because I want members of the public to be confident that we have got their best interests at heart when we do finances. And those that are on the Finance Committee take it extremely seriously. It's taxpayers' money. I think, because of what's been raised, I think perhaps we've got to find a way that they're able to have access to the documentation if they're not online. I think that's the problem. But if anyone wants to have a look at the finances, you're not familiar online, you've only got to ring up and you'd be able to pick them up from here.
Thank you. We move on to item 6. We've been asked to consider whether we wish to take on the stewardship and maintenance of the playing area adjacent to the Burton Centre. This is the outside playing pitch, which is adjacent to the car park of the Burton Centre. Councillor Goody.
We're in the process of developing this H1 hub, which is only a few yards down the road, and I think our time and resources would be better spent on that development rather than get diverted to something else, which would not be joined up anyway with the hub. I think if we want a play area of the H1, that's something we can consider later and something that we can ask the council to finance if needed. But
Thank you, Councillor Goody. I just perhaps before we go any further ask the Town Clerk to outline the potential implications of taking it on or not taking it on.
Okay, this is the all weather playing area that's currently locked by the library and the hospice centre. That's due to the fact that there's a wall at the back which has been lowered for safety reasons, but really needs to be taken down and rebuilt if it's to be used for football or anything like that. Otherwise, there is quite a large vertical crack through it that the surveyor is concerned about. The subsurface of the playing surface is clearly on its last legs, and the actual surface itself it wouldn't be safe to play on. So the estimates from the County Council surveyors who with me had a look at this, they reckon, and this is their professional guess as opposed to any sort of action investigation, but they believe £30,000, which is effectively starting again, really. Taking up the whole thing and starting again. Now, the approximate life of that playing field is about 10 years, so it's about £3,000 a year, the cost. And obviously, in the past, when there was a youth centre there, it was chargeable, there was somebody there to take the money, etc. There are certain risks, and I think councillors would probably want to think about if you had £30,000, it's probably a little bit what Councillor Goody said. If you had £30,000 to spend on youth provision, would you decide to put a multi-use games area tucked around the back of that car park? There are issues relating to drug use which are causing real headaches for the hospice, the library and the police at the moment around there. So security is an issue, because some of the fencing was found removed and rolled up ready for selling on, one imagines. So there are a lot of issues to take on, but if it's not taken on, then the chances are, we're not the only people being asked, Toby Croft are being asked, the County Council are thinking about it, the Borough are thinking about it. But clearly if nobody wants to take it on, then that actual geographical space, they'll seek a different use for it altogether.
Councillor Turner, thank you.
Yes, I was already thinking of making a different geographical of that space. It would make an excellent addition to the somewhat lacking car parking areas away from the high street. And if we were to take stewardship, I'm sure that we could charge some small fee that would contribute towards the maintenance and upkeep of the Magistrates Court, which is the youth provision after all. The thing which I don't have though, to answer this question on here, is that I think we've got little information about what the alternatives are. So what would happen to the site if we don't take it on? And what risks are there? So if somebody else takes it on, what else would they do with it other than continue with it as is? And would we like it as a town council? I think if we've got a say in what's going on, that would be far better than any other alternative I can think of.
The hospice were part of that meeting, and they actually raised the car parking issue for their own staff, and certainly they would be happy to see it used for that purpose.
Councillor Glatcher.
It seems a very strange place to have a play area. I've seen balls come over the top and bounce on people's cars, including mine, and I wasn't very happy about it. So it seems a very strange place, and I think it's not suitable as a play area.
Clearly it wasn't when the Burton Centre was a youth centre. Any other councillors comment? Councillor.
There was a play area for many years. A shame that's the way the town's gone and activity has changed. That was well used years ago, but the pitch itself is destroyed now. The floodlight is ruined. It is a major place for truck use. I walk through there every Friday at lunch over there, and it's a shame because there is it needs to be sorted out because it's a nice terrible state. Terrible state.
I'm hearing, sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, following on from Councillor Berman, I have seen used playing in there, even though it's locked. So there is an issue there as far as making it safe. Because we should really be saying that, you know, there's something that needs to be done very urgently there because they can get in even though it's locked.
Councillor Good is proposing then that we should say no, we don't want to take this on. All those, do we have a second for Councillor Good? We do. Councillor Martin, thank you. All those who...
I just want to clarify my point that I was making. I don't think we have enough information yet to make that decision. So we don't yet know what it would cost if we were to take it on and do something else with it. I think we're missing key information to make that decision tonight.
With respect, I think Town Park has explained the cost to us is potentially 30k immediately and
that's to convert it back to a plan.
I think just for Council Tony and everything, just to be really clear, at the moment the owners, the County Council, are exploring whether or not anyone wants to save it for its current use.
Okay.
If it's to be used for a different purpose, the owners are not planning on offering it to the County Council, to the Town Council for any use we fancy. So it wouldn't be for us to turn it into a car park. The owners, the County Council, would start from scratch from that point, saying if nobody wants it as a playing area, they will do what Councillor Fern suggested, which would make it safe. Councillor Hammond says the same thing. Make it safe, remove the walls, etc. It's an open area, and then decide what to use it for. And that may or may not involve the Town Council.
That's clear, thank you.
Councillor Byrne?
No, I think the clerk has clarified what I was going to say.
So Councillor Goody's proposal, seconded by Councillor Martin, is that we do not wish to pursue this option. All those in favour of that motion? Okay. Thank you. Item 7, winter arrangements for Haverhill. The first part is grip bins. I understand we have one outstanding grip bin request for Suffolk and close. I'm also advised that there may be some outstanding from last year's list. Are you aware of any others? Councillor Berry.
Yeah, I'd just like to remind Colin that I gave a list to Will last year and we'd got no money left. We'd spent all the funds on grip bins, and there was 3 grip bins that he promised, obviously he didn't know he was going at this time, that he promised that he would ensure that they were at the top of the list for this winter. So I'll have to go back through my emails and perhaps you'll go back through yours. I know 2 were on the Clements and there was one somewhere else and I cannot recall it at the moment. So if we're going to look at one for Strasbourg Square, you're not, okay. Suffolk and Close, then I would suggest that we add another 3 to that, if the funds allow it. And if the funds don't allow it, I think we've got to find funds for these bins because I think I heard tonight we're expecting snow by the end of this week, perhaps. So no. Yes. I don't really.
Ask Town Clerk to explore it if there is money left in it.
There is a budget.
If there's money left in that budget. Any further funds?
Nothing's been spent this year, so.
And if councillors have no objection, we'll meet that from the standing list. Item B on there, I confess to not knowing anything about the snowballing scheme, but I probably should. So I'll ask the Town Clerk to tell us about the snowballing scheme.
This is a county council programme which enables parishes and towns to get involved. This is where volunteers, particularly I suppose for some more outlying villages, particularly if your village happens to not be on a bus route or on a what I might call a priority route for Britain, which is for volunteers to be out and about, particularly pavements, if there's old people's homes, something like that. And basically a fairly simple set of rules that so long as the council and volunteers abide by them in doing the work of snow clearance and putting grit down, enables your community to have a better gridded area than if it relies simply on what the borough and county council could do through their paid resource. So snow wardens are basically volunteers who offer to do a very specific job, often literally outside their house. So there's a grit bin 100 yards down the road from them, and there are 3 or 4 houses that have elderly people or disabled people in them, and they will offer to get the public footpath in front of their houses, wherever it might be, or the approach to a pedestrian crossing, whatever it might be. So it's a matter of recruiting volunteers, providing equipment, so snow shovels, gloves, if they don't have their own boots or anything like that, we'll do that, providing boots. But basically it's for volunteers to assist in keeping Haverhill going. Obviously you're not out on a big main road while gritters are out there.
We register online, so you can't buy insurance by the county to do that?
If you follow the rules, then
Yeah.
yes, it's the county council's insurance that covers their work. Yeah.
Councillor Byrne.
Yeah, I think we need clarity. That there's all sorts of different ideas that if you grit or salt an area and then the postman slips and falls, you're responsible. So I think, I don't know whether that's true, but I think I've read somewhere in this document, community preparedness, that people cannot be sued if you try to clear a pathway and somebody unfortunately has slipped over. So can the clerk give us some guidance on that, because that's going to be essential to those that are doing it?
Yeah, this is a document I did email to all of you last week.
Yeah, I've got to find
page
it.
3 of 15, anyone clearing snow from outside their own property or someone else's property would only be liable for an accident if their efforts actually made the pavement less safe. So if you follow their rules, then you won't make it less safe. It's one of those kind of sort of aggressive things that people always say about first aid and removing snow, etc., that you become liable. Only if you do it in such a negligent and stupid way, pour water all over or something like that, and it probably freezes. That would be an unreasonable thing to do. If you follow the rules and actually use grit, shovels, etc., then no, you couldn't possibly have made it worse, so therefore nobody could demonstrate you've made it worse.
Thank you. Councillor Robbins.
It's very similar to what I was going to ask, and Maureen said it, whether I'm wrong. If you register with yourselves, so I'm going to clear Broad Street, that gives you insurance against what you were saying, I believe. They read that in there somewhere, but you have to register. That's what I want to clarify.
In order for that to happen, Councillor, there had to be a scheme. The town council does have a scheme, so that's what we're being asked to consider, whether we want to set up a scheme and necessarily cost. Councillor
Personally, I think this is a great idea. When I grew up, this was the sort of thing which people did for each other in our roads and streets and villages anyway. I certainly already do it for several of my neighbours, including an elderly neighbour that lives in the corner. And I can't say too much about it. I think this is a great idea. It should put people's minds at rest and hopefully get some of our community engagement going. I'm very much in favour of this.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest that it's probably a bit late this year to get the scheme up and running. I think most people agree with that. Can I suggest therefore we ask the town clerk to investigate what we need to do to get the scheme up and running, what it's going to cost us, because there will be equipment, training or whatever, and perhaps we'll try and work something up for next year rather than for this year.
Winter months are a good time to recruit, so you're probably better off recruiting this year for next year. Because in the summertime, try recruiting, nobody's really interested in shoveling snow in the summer. So.
The councillor's happy, that's how we proceed.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We move on to item 8, arrangements for meetings in May. Some of the meetings have had to be rearranged because of the imminence of an election, and the town clerk has presented the dates that have been revised. The only one that seems to have any major impact, as far as I can see, is D on your agenda, which is the annual meeting of the town council. We'd normally be here on a Tuesday, but the Tuesday that we've tried to schedule for it, this isn't available. So the proposal is that either it's on that Tuesday at the Leaston Community Centre, or it's held on the Monday here in the town hall where we usually hold it. Councillor William.
I propose we have it on the Monday here at the town hall. I think it ought to still be at the Arts Centre.
I'll second that proposal. I think it should be at the town.
Yeah,
town hall.
I fully back that because we've got an annual meeting as well with the town council, and we do normally have quite a few of the members of the public. So I think it should be in a comfortable place. And, you know, I must admit, it's quite nice at Leeson Centre as it is, but you look at the Arts Centre, we've got seating, also it's seating where everybody can see the mayor who answers the question. So I propose that we have it on Monday.
Councillor Bennett.
I'm going to be not difficult, because I'm not difficult, but why can we not cancel or give notice to whoever's there on the 19th, the day that we would? This is a really important event for our town. We're being told that we can't have it in the town hall on the day we usually have it. So unless it's something really, really important for the other individuals, I think we should try and swap it around.
It's the live broadcast by the English National Opera of Gilbert Sullivan. So that's the day.
That's it. Well, we can do it between areas. We could do. But is that the only date and day they can do this on?
You're asking all the same questions I quizzed Nick on. Unfortunately, yes, it is the only day that they're broadcasting.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. I'm not sure we can compete.
No, I don't think we can.
We go for Monday.
So the Monday's been proposed. Does that suit everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, proposal made by Councillor Woodley and seconded by Councillor Robbins. All those in favour? Okay. Item 9, report on defibrillators. Have I said that right? I think I have. Councillors will have received a report outlining the options available to us and making a recommendation that we make an application to the British Heart Foundation for financial assistance, provide a cabinet within the Arts Centre reception, and support Councillor McClatch's proposal to involve other businesses, and then create an earmark reserve back to the sinking fund. Did you want to speak to your proposal?
Yes, I've had permission to use this SADS logo on stickers, and obviously the wording would be changed, but it'd be something like that. Go all over the shops and reception areas, and the telephone numbers of 4 people with defibrillators in situ would be put on there, and the location obviously. I can't do them until the one is in situ in the town centre here, because obviously it wouldn't be fair to put a number on if there's nothing there. So that's the latest news on that.
Councillor Billy.
I'm quite happy with that. One thing I would like to ask is, we used to have a defibrillator, and I know time expired. I think the council now have got the time to think about how we plan in the future, how we ought to, with this new defibrillator will have a lifespan as well. So we must be aware of that before it runs out and get a new one in place back to back, you know what I mean? Because I think it's so important there's one here that works.
Okay, I withdraw
It's all in there.
I would withdraw council's attention to the brief, which you may not have time to read completely. It actually says the annual budget allowance of £250, 180 would go on the various replacement costs, and £70 towards direct replacement costs for the device. So there is provision in the budget to propose. Do we have a proposal for the recommendation? Councillor McClatchy, a second, Councillor Martin. All those in favour of the recommendation, accepting the recommendation in full. Are you in favour of accepting the recommendation or no? Thank you. Item 10, report back on 1 Haverhill. Further report from the Mayor and Town Clerk on the Town Council involved with 1 Haverhill. Town Clerk's going to start.
The public forum took place last week,
Wednesday.
Yeah, last Wednesday, time flies. And it was interesting that the members of the public who came along very much echoed the views of the members of One Haverhill about how important the town master plan is. Some were quite strident in what they were saying, but actually they were still very supportive of the fact that something needs to be done, and were impatient, as I think everybody in this room is and everybody at One Haverhill is, to get on with the town centre master plan. So that was, I think that's just the, quite what that is actually. Yeah, so that's basically was one of the main parts of the forum that constantly came up, a recurring theme. I was ready to field questions about the youth hub, and actually the questions were all about the town centre master plan. There was a very good presentation of the film that's been made, which tells people about what One Haverhill does. That will be online shortly, if not already. The meeting was filmed by Mr. Burns, many thanks to doing that, and I understand that is also online, so those of you who weren't able to get there can watch the entire thing and see the members of the board and see them in action. Good presentations were from the displays from the ambassadors, community ambassadors, what they get up to, and also our own Karen's apprenticeship scheme as well, which is very good. Anything else?
This is H1.
Oh, right, well, the H1 itself, just in terms of progress, the board of One Haverhill has been asked to decide whether it wants to fund the next step in this, which is the financial feasibility plan in terms of where we get all the rest of the money from we need to pay for it. And I've been copied into a few responses, and they've all been very, very positive. So I'm just waiting to hear back from Claire at the County Council to whether or not she's got the majority of responses in from the board to confirm that they're all happy to go ahead with that. That will then give us a full blueprint, and it'll be down then to that mix of One Haverhill to make a decision well, they'll be able to say in terms of supporting, but also the Town Council who will eventually take over the project. Once One Haverhill has got it teed up, ready to go, there will be a point where the Town Council will have to make that final decision to whether or not they're going to go with it once One Haverhill has got it fully shaped and formed for the Council.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah, unfortunately I wasn't at the meeting, so I will be watching the video. I was at the Borough on an overview and scrutiny committee. The days clashed, unfortunately. I think it's tremendously important that so many attended and spoke about their frustrations. And because that was an open meeting and appeared to be extremely successful, I think it's time we ask the question again, why are their meetings still closed to the public? I just find it totally unacceptable, it's undemocratic, and I think the public are entitled to have similar meetings on a regular basis if they're not allowed to attend every meeting. But I still do not comprehend why these individuals that are representing our residents, that they want to shut the residents out of their meetings. And obviously they would have to be disciplined, and there'd have to be terms of reference and everything else in place so they never got out of hand. But I think the Town Council, because we felt that that was tremendously successful, should again approach it on behalf of the residents. A closed shop is not healthy.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Clancy.
I agree with everything she just said.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Temple. Item 11, adoption of committee reports. I'll discuss the first one, but the others I'd like to take on block because all these committee agenda minutes have been issued. But on the first one, there is a concern the appeals committee that does have to meet, maybe in quorum given the existing membership.
Do you wish to extend the membership in order to prevent that?
Yes.
We're looking then for a proposal for an additional member for the Appeals Committee in the event that it needs to meet to improve its robustness in terms of policy. I think for a quorum we need at least 3. And the current members that we have are Councillor McClatchy, Councillor Roach, Councillor Carr, Councillor Russo and Councillor James Stroud. So we need an additional one on to make sure that we come before it when it needs, and it cannot be anyone who's a member of the Personnel Committee for obvious reasons. Councillor Hannon.
Yeah, I propose I nominate Councillor Goody.
Seconded by, it's nominated by Councillor Hannon, seconded by Councillor Stroud. Any other nominations?
Yes. Given Councillor Handon's interest in the Personnel Committee, I'd like to propose that Councillor Handon be on the Appeals Committee. I think he'd make an excellent.
Sorry, perhaps not made it. We can't have someone on the Personnel Committee on the Appeals Committee.
No, but perhaps not on Personnel Committee.
No,
But he's got an interest, that's what I'm saying. Perhaps showing quite an interest in being personnel. I think being in appeals would be a very nice place to do.
Can I come back on that?
Please.
No, I've got interest in everything that goes on with the town council. Call me nosy or what, but no, on this occasion, I would like to turn it down.
Thank you for the nomination, Councillor Turnbull. It's obviously been declined. Councillor
Can I propose that Councillor Robbins be put forward?
I'll second that.
So we have 2 nominations. Councillor Goody proposed by Councillor Hammond, seconded by Councillor Stroud, and Councillor Robbins proposed by Councillor McClatchy, seconded by Councillor Taylor.
First proposal first.
Our first proposal first. Those in favour of nomination for Councillor Goody, raise your hand now, please. And thank you. Those in favour of Councillor Robbins. Okay, it's carried. That's a strange recommendation.
Yeah.
So we'll take the other committees, B, C, D and E, that's the Finance, Leisure, Personnel and Planning, on block. All those in favour of adopting the minutes. Thank you. And we move on to item 12. The town clerk has asked us to establish how we wish to receive our summons to come to committee meetings, and whether we wish it to be by email or hard copy. Councillor Goody.
If we elect to have summons by email, will there be a hard copy on the day?
So if you elect to have it by email, there will be a hard copy here, but we won't get a hard copy in the post. The object of the exercise is to save the postage primarily, rather than printing costs. Are there any other questions?
But one should say we're also saving some print costs when we have apologies. We'll know the apologies before we put the documents.
Councillor Turner.
Yeah, just to make sure I've understood this properly, that this is for individual councillors, to indicate whether individual preference is anything. Yeah, okay.
So there we go then, we'll go around the table. Councillor Clutching.
I'm quite happy with that.
Email or hard copy?
Email.
Councillor Turner.
Hard copy for me, please.
Councillor Robbins.
Email.
Email. Councillor.
Email, please.
Councillor.
Email for the whole.
You're right, keep that.
Hard copy.
Email.
Hard copy, please.
Councillor Blair.
Email, hard copy here. No, that's fine. I can't print off, but I can read, so that's fine.
Thank you.
Sorry, could I just ask for clarity? Are you stretching for to
Yeah, just-
represent?
Yeah, just send one to
Yeah,
me.
okay.
Item 13, cancellation of contract with Picasso HR. You will probably know we have a contract with for our HR activities with a company called Picasso. At the moment, we pay them a retainer in addition to paying fees for specific tasks performed. The proposal is that we cancel that retainer and keep that as a reserve to pay for ad hoc purposes when we need it, which won't necessarily be with Picasso. We'll be shopping around to the other providers. So the proposal is that we cancel the current HR support contract with Picasso. All those in favour? Thank you. Item 14 is authorised payments. That way, usual reminder that the payments listed here are dealt with the schedules, have always been checked, the invoice has been checked against payments and the cheques that are actually signed by 2 councillors before they're sent. I seek your authorisation of the checklist as listed. All those in favour? Thank you. Item 15, to receive items of urgent correspondence. I understand the Town Clerk has one item wishes to raise and Councillor Goody has an item he wishes to raise. So the Town Clerk does.
You'll find on the table in front of you the interim internal audit report for the Town Council that was carried out earlier today. Take it away and read it at your leisure. You will be pleased to know that you won't find any criticism at all in there. Very happy with robustness. Some useful suggestions from her in terms of how we minute some things picked up, because there's been a lot of chatter in various forums, and also I know in Essex, that a different external auditor has had some peculiar thoughts on what should be, how things should be particularly limited. So it does no harm to look over the fence and see how other people are doing it, and we can pick up from that. So she's kindly provided that information. I was aware of it beforehand because there's a lot of people complaining bitterly at what the external auditor for that particular entity has been saying. But we have a different external auditor who's rather more experienced and doesn't ask such things. So yes, this internal audit is complete, so please take that away. It will go online for the public to read as well, but you've got that literally hot off the press.
Can I just ask one question on that? On the front page, under the VAT return, it's noted that the threshold for contract tenure is 60,000 SO18C and 20,000 FR113. It's suggested that both figures need to be the same. So do we need to make a decision here, or is that something for finance?
No, so I've got to look at, basically, we've got to check whether they're supposed to be saying the same thing or saying something different in any case.
Okay.
And once I've established that, I'll go to finance.
Thank you very much.
Okay, there's no decision required there. Thank you. Councillor Goodyear.
I'd like to bring to the Council's attention that Tesco's, despite not having yet received planning consent for the modules in the car park, started yesterday boarding the car park off in one section and fitting workman huts in there, but in anticipation of putting these units in there already. I think that goes against the spirit of planning.
I have.
Town Clerk has had contact from Tesco.
Well, I have, but not on that particular issue. When Councillor Goody alerted me that, I have passed that information on to planning for them to take enforcement action. They do have some existing planning permission for a click and collect kiosk. So it's whether or not, I haven't been there.
So it's whether they're stretching the point.
Well, it's whether it's that piece of work they're doing or whether they're doing the pods.
Okay, thank you.
Item 16, we don't need to exclude the press and public because there are no staffing matters to be discussed. I would just mention though, as I would have in staffing matters if we were having it, that today I was very privileged to present certificates from you, the Town Council, to 3 members of staff, one of whom has served us for 12 years, another for 17 years, and one for 18 years. So those 3 members of staff have had a certificate of appreciation from us, and we're working our way to make sure that all staff get some kind of recognition of long service as it occurs. We appear to have overlooked this for some time. We shall in future. So the 3, I don't know the surnames, the people I was represented, they were Helen
Parker, 12 years service. Pam Jones for 17 years.
And Vicky Phillips, of course I do know, because she's the Mayor's Secretary, for 18 years. Really quite colossal amounts of service, and I said to the 3 today when I spoke to them, we recognise that the face of the council is our staff, and the commitment they've made to us over all those years has been a very important part of our work, and I thank them on your behalf. Did you get a gold watch? Date of next meeting is the 25th of November, and you'll know there's a trustees meeting of the town hall charity immediately after this meeting, so keep your seats, and I'll try not to take it over to 2 hours, councillors. Being no further business, the meeting closes at 20:11.